Hey, good people. Davia here, and welcome to Tales from the Shaker, a Davia Williams Stevenson podcast. Okay, y'all, you're probably tired of me saying, oh, my guest, I'm so excited about my guest, but I really am excited about this guest. This is my sister friend, one of my best friends my entire life. We were just talking about how I remember when I moved to Oklahoma City in fourth grade. I remember my 10th birthday party, and she was there.
Yeah.
We were roommates in college. We have been at each other's weddings. We have come alongside one another as we've raised our kids. Like, this is my person, and I'm going to do this without getting emotional. Oh, my God. Okay. Looking at your beautiful face, I just had a whole moment. Y'all, you might see a new side today. And like many of my other guests, she is a whole badass, okay? That's my girl. So I'm going to skip around her bio. I want to read it all to you because it was fun to me reading it. Like, I know these things, but I didn't know these things. I haven't seen it in writing and in order. Come on now. Okay. Her name is Ellisa Johnson. Did I mention that? Her name is Ellisa Johnson. Ellisa Johnson, the driving force behind Kelb's Strategy Group, LLC, and Fourth Quarter Plus Overtime, a nonprofit organization started in 2023. The name synonymous with leadership, empowerment, and impactful change. As an author of the compelling autobiography, Fourth Quarter Plus Overtime, you're going to know what that means soon. She's not just shaping the future, but also leaving an indelible mark on the present. That's you. Her journey as a trailblazer commenced when she took the helm of the 2020 Community Partnerships and Engagement Program and assumed the role of Deputy Regional Director at the Chicago Regional Census Bureau. I feel like we're skipping a whole bunch before you got to that. You had this political engagement space your whole life, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit because I always thought you might run for office, and you never wavered in saying you would not. So I guess you knew better than me. I'm going to skip some things about learning how to run large teams in this current position. Here's one of the first times I remember realizing that, oh man, she's not just my Lisa. She's bad. Is when you were recognized, right, by Ebony Magazine as one of the 30 future Black leaders of America. I was so proud. I remember that. You hold a bachelor's degree in communications and political science with an emphasis on public administration from the University of Oklahoma, my alma mater, where we were roommates for a period of time. We'll talk about that a little bit. Gosh, Lisa, I don't know. I'm going to skip to, as you continue, and I believe you will continue, to pave a path for a brighter future, we can only anticipate what remarkable achievements lie ahead.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
That sounds like such a wonderful person.
You really are something else. You really are something else. And drove through snowstorms and flat tires and all kinds of things from Chicago to be here today because that's what we do.
Yep. You're right. That's what we do.
That's what we do.
That's what we've always done. So
welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I am so excited. I just, watch you, and this is your element. And, I'm so happy for you. And, there have been so many joyous times and tears of joy, tears of sadness, tears because we just shed tears.
Yeah.
So, but I'm so happy for you, and you are clearly landed right in your element. So I'm very happy for you.
I'm loving this space.
Yeah.
I'm loving
it. It fits you very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
It fits you very well.
We'll see where it goes. I'm going to ride it until I can't, I think. And as you discover, when you step into places, other things open up that you didn't know were there. So I'm just moving forward. And as long as I get to have amazing people like you to talk to and talk with and share your story, because my goal, what I hope through this space, is that people connect in some way and that they are inspired to shake things up in your own life. And we talked about how our friendship has been lifelong and we've been through a whole lot of things.
Yes.
And I know there were a number of places where we had some big old shakeups.
Yes.
Right. And I'm thinking about our senior year in high school.
Oh my goodness.
We're going back to that.
What do we tell?
Well, yeah, we're going to be relatively discreet. Woo, okay. But no, with your pregnancy, with Shin, who is this amazing young woman.
Yep.
Um, but that was a change in circumstances that
Yep.
were not planned.
Yep.
We're dealing with a surprise pregnancy. I was dealing with cancer. Like, it was a crazy time where we didn't know anything about how life would turn out. I'm gonna use my fan periodically, and if you need to borrow it, feel
Okay.
okay. Um, so do you remember? Like, you were always one of those folks who had it together. Seemed to a good student, good athlete, good daughter from
Uh-huh.
a family. Your mother was always quite prominent. My parents as well to some degree. And what was it like if you could take yourself back there? I know Tisha's like grown, so we talk some decades ago
Right,
now.
right, right.
But, while we take the journey, can you remember what was it like when you had to tell your parents and tell your friends that you were pregnant?
Well, you know what? It was, when I look back, that's a part of my life that I feel like I don't necessarily spend a lot of time analyzing. I don't, per se. I mean, it was a journey.
Yeah.
We were excited. We were graduating, and no one knew. I mean, I had on my cap and gown just like everyone else. Um, and no one knew. I kept it to myself because I'm still processing. I want to go to college. I want to go to Houston. I want to go to college. It was so many dreams that I had. And all I could do is just look around at all the happiness that my friends were discovering. Excitement about going to OU, and all of our friends were going somewhere different. And so I knew that my life would be different, that I would have to make some choices. And so you mentioned, when did I tell my mom and dad? I did not. My mom came to me
Oh,
and said, "Well, when are you going to tell us?"
wow.
Because my mother, yeah, my mother
Yeah.
knew. My mother could look at anyone from a distance and know that they were expecting this. So she was like, "When were you gonna tell us?" And I just remember breaking down because at that point graduation was over,
Yeah.
and literally I was 5 months pregnant because I was so little then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little high school
I
skinny.
remember those days.
Yeah. And so, it was, so I was able to keep that for many, many months. And then I think I slowly started to tell certain friends, you and other people, kind of quietly, that, I was expecting. And so it was a tough time in my life.
Mhm.
And so I'm what, 17, 18 years old, and I'm trying to maneuver through, what will my life look like? And so I had to take that journey alone when you all start going off to school and everyone was excited about their dorm and, Walker Tower and all that. So I didn't get that. I had to plan what my life was going to look like. But I think at some point, through the strength of my mother and the strength of my father, my mother was determined. She was like, she's going to college. We're going to figure it out. And I remember overhearing that conversation between she and my dad. And my dad was like, "Well, what about the baby?" And my mother was like, "Well, we're going to keep the baby. We're going to help her raise the baby, and she's going to move on and go to college." And so that first year I had to set out. I couldn't go to OU. I had to stay local.
Well, she was born in September. School
She was
started
born in
around then.
September. And I tell you, she's the love of my life.
It's a year.
She's a beautiful young lady inside and out. And so we did it.
Yeah.
Tisha and I took that journey. My mom and dad, they were right there the entire time, and went to junior college my first year. Worked at good old John A. Brown's.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes.
Part time.
Yeah.
And saved up some money. And then the following fall, I was at OU. But one of the things that has always stood out in my mind was after I had Tisha. I remember you coming to visit. I remember seeing you coming around the corner at my mom's house. And I was so excited. I was like,
She was
you
so
know,
pretty too.
yeah, yeah. So I just remember that. As soon as I had Tisha, just days later, I just remember seeing you coming around the corner. And then I remember seeing you going back around the corner. And so I'm like, this is, it gave me that drive to really aspire to go away to college and to not give up that dream.
And I love the way your parents, because you were both. They allowed you to be a college student.
Yeah, they did.
But you didn't step away from being a mother.
Yep.
You were a student during the week.
Yep.
And on the weekends you had that baby.
That's right.
And I remember her being in our apartment when she was potty training.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, the partnership and the support of your parents and your determination. We laugh about how Lisa started college a year late but finished on time, and I started on time and finished late. Whatever.
Yeah.
But you've always had focus and drive and determination, discipline, in a way that I didn't have, and I don't think I was forced to have it, until I had to have it. This is when I had it, get by on just some natural smarts. You had that, but you also had whole set of responsibilities that a lot of college students didn't have.
Right.
We still have fun.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt, we did, and that was the agreement that I had with my parents. I would, go to school during the week, and most Thursdays I would leave. Especially if there was like a party on the weekend that I wanted to make sure I got back to Norman to attend. So I would leave on Thursdays. I would go do my motherly responsibilities, and then I would head back to Norman if there was a party or something, a football game or something I absolutely did not want to miss. But I had such supporting parents, and they never left my side. My mother and father, they were there. They were there in every step of the way. And I give all the praise to God, but I also give all the praise to my mom and dad, because they allowed me to not to miss a beat, not to miss my college experience. And I was fortunate to be able to go to OU, and you were my first roommate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, in that space where I'm with someone who loves me, who understands my plight, who understands my journey. And that was important to me, that I could be in a space where I had someone who was there to take care of me and to protect me from any outside noise and so we had fun.
I think we did our share of protecting one another. Okay, the weirdest image just came through my mind, and I don't know why I'm putting this out here in the cyber world, but do you remember how sometimes we didn't get our laundry done, and we'd have to wash our underwear?
My God!
Do you remember pinning it to the ceiling fan?
Yes.
And where would be spinning to dry? Oh my gosh, we thought that was ingenious. I guess it worked, because we did it more than once.
It did. It absolutely did. It absolutely did.
Yeah.
I remember not having any change and discovering that if you went to the laundry room, you could reach up on top of the washer and dryer. I don't know if you knew this, but you could reach up there and make the washer and dryer come on without putting a coin in there. So,
okay, you kept that.
I must have kept that. So finally, I think the owner caught on to the fact that there was like no money in the laundry machine, and so they fixed it. So, but yeah, so those were good times, though.
I just had some of the funniest moments, and then we often talk about our breakup. But remember that one apartment? Was it our second apartment to Hell the Roaches, the Roach Motel?
Yes.
And the setup was so weird, with our bedrooms on each end and bathrooms next to one another with a door in between them. Yeah, we doing our makeup, and you dropped your lipstick in the toilet. We got that lipstick out. But what was my affectionate name I called you?
For some reason, I don't remember.
Boo Boo Lips.
I was hoping that over the years you would forget about that.
That's a core memory. Boo Boo Lips is a core memory. Yeah. But we grew up somehow.
Yeah, we did.
We knew that it was time for us to stop being roommates so that we could stay friends. And I think that was by divine appointment, because that's when you met your husband.
Yep.
That's when you met your husband.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I did.
You met Kim. I think that might have been when I went to Atlanta. Is that when I went to
you had moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the first year we were not roommates.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, you were in Atlanta, and I think I had my own place at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but I just want to say that, during those years that we were roommates, I mean, we made some beautiful memories, and tons of laughs and, until we, like you said, until we discovered that it was time for us to break up.
I
So the
think it was time for us
breakups,
to start to grow up.
yeah,
I think that was
yeah,
a turning
yeah,
point for us.
yeah. So, but the good thing is that we both recognize that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so we both arrived at the same place. And, even though you were in Atlanta, the years from growing up together since we were little kids and, all that remained, the foundation remained.
Yeah.
And I think that that was very key to where we are today.
I think so. Moving to different parts of the country.
Yep.
And Kim was Kim still playing football when
He was
you?
still playing football.
Okay, so he was at Oklahoma State at
Hmm.
that time, and I want to segue us at some point to the book and the foundation, and
Hmm.
where you get this fourth quarter plus overtime, what that
Hmm.
story means to you, how you got that title. So your husband was a Division I college football player, had dreams of a professional career. Your son Bailey, Division I college football player, had dreams of a professional career. And your youngest daughter, Sydney, Division I college basketball player.
Yep.
And I don't know, I never heard talk about her wanting to go to the WNBA. I don't know, was that a thing? Was that
Yeah.
of some sort?
She talked about it for
Yeah,
not long,
yeah,
not long.
yeah. She had a lot of business aspirations, I
Yeah.
think, that may have made the transition from college athlete to grown up life a little different for her than I think it's difficult for a lot of athletes. And so I'm skipping some things. We'll probably pick some things up, but I want to make sure we talk about your book and your foundation, which, by the way, is funded by Rock Nation, right? Like, come
Hmm.
on, that's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's talk about the title,
Okay.
and then some of the content of your book.
Okay. So, I always actually the book was not my primary focus. The book just kind of evolved. In starting fourth quarter as a way for my husband and I and my children to provide guidance for other student athletes. And so the book just kind of developed. But fourth quarter plus overtime. So I'll tell you a little bit about the name. So when trying to decide what I should call this whole thing that I had discovered was part of God's mission for me, um, I asked the kids, if I were to ask you what quarter in life I am, because I love sports. Like I'm the one who
Mhm.
should have really been the professional athlete
Well, you were
because I
quite a
love
track athlete back in
yeah,
the
because
day
I love
too.
sports,
Yeah.
and everybody thinks that my kids, that this whole athletic thing came from their father, but really, I believe honestly it came from me, and that's a fact.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna take that with me.
I think you got
Yeah,
you had something to
yeah.
do with that for
So
sure.
I asked the kids, if I were to ask you what quarter of life do you think I'm in? So this is I was approaching 60. I did a little biblical research to find out, how many years does God really promise us, in terms of, our lifespan. And so I surveyed my children and I was hoping that they would say you're in the third quarter.
Mm.
But they all said, Mom, I think you're in the fourth quarter. And I accepted that.
That's sobering though.
Yeah. And I accepted that. So the plus overtime comes into play because of my mother. My mother's 102.
Yeah.
And so I believe that she's in overtime.
Yeah.
And so I merged those two names to come up with fourth quarter plus overtime, partly based on sports, but primarily based on where I am in my life. And so, here I am. I took years of things that my children, my husband have gone through in terms of their athletic careers, and really wanted to figure out a path where we could help those individuals who have gone through some of the same struggles. Those that or without people who can really tell them what it's like to be thrown into the arena of sports. And it's a lot that comes with it. It's a lot that comes with the success, the failure, the ability to remain in it. And so it's something that I had I kept going back to it. It's been 15 years since I first thought about this. How can we give back? Because my mother and father, they,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
in your DNA.
yeah, it is.
I
That's my
mean,
mother
yeah.
is still, she has dementia and she's still in her present thoughts. She's still talking about programs and how
Yeah.
she can give back and what are we doing to make sure that we're giving back.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I landed, where I am now. So in terms of the whole fourth quarter, um, the nonprofit, as well as the LLC, in terms of speaking and showing up at places where our experience can help those who are going through some of the same struggles and happiness all at the same time.
So what are some of those struggles?
Well, I think for me, so Kim attended SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and he was part of the infamous death penalty, which was, I don't think people really realize the impact that that had on the athletes. I mean, we're talking about young, impressionable 20-year-olds who all experienced the same thing. Their lives was basically torn apart, living their dream, playing football at one of the most prominent universities in the country. And then all of a sudden that's taken away from you. And so it was pretty traumatic.
And due to the actions of the adults.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Exactly.
Do
The actions of the adults. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so to relive that whole experience in terms of having to shift your life. And at that point, I had Tisha and we were pregnant with Bailey.
Okay.
And so we had to really kind of maneuver through, where do we go? Our life is in Dallas, and where do we go? And so Kim was at the point, I mean, Kim is a family man. He's always been a family man. And he had all these coaches from around the country, coming in, trying to encourage him to go somewhere else to play football. But at the end of the day, he said, I'm staying in Dallas. My family means more. I'm not going to uproot my family. And my nephew, Chris Arnold, who works for the Dallas Mavericks, he called me. There have been 2 occasions in my life where Chris has just appeared. And he called me one day. We had decided we were going to stay in Dallas, and he said, don't do it. Go away. Let Kim finish playing that last year. And we followed his lead, and Kim ended up going to Oklahoma State University, where he finished out his eligibility. But you ask in terms of what are some of those challenges. I mean, injuries and not making that NFL cut, not being for Sydney, not being able to travel in terms of being with a top tier Princeton or a UConn where they travel during your time playing basketball at those universities. So those are things that were really hard for her. But I would say overall, the injuries and the disappointment is just, people don't realize the mental and psychological impact that has on individuals.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, to get to where you're playing at an elite level,
Yep.
you've committed much of your childhood and teenage years to this pursuit, to this sport. I have a niece and a nephew who are world-class athletes, track athletes. And from the time they were young, this is what they've done.
Yep.
This is what they've done. And so having to fasten your identity somewhere around something outside of that context when you haven't been afforded the opportunity to do that because you're talented. It's like the talent opens up doors, but it shuts down spaces as well, if that makes some sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because like for Bailey played at Iowa State University. Great experience for him, but he left high school with a few academic challenges that we had to work through. You're up against the NCAA in terms of eligibility, and what that looked like for him. He had to leave a lot of large scholarships on the table in order for him to get his grades in check. But Iowa State showed up. They stayed with him through all those challenges, and he went on to college with a high school injury in his leg that later impacted him on the NFL front. Um, but he got to Iowa State. He was on the Big 12 all academic dean's list. But then those were, sacrifices he had to make. He had to switch his major his junior year of college, and he was not happy about that. But it's all about the win. It's all about the win for the university. And Bailey had to step back away from what he really wanted in terms of his education and his degree. He graduated during his 5 years at Iowa State, and that was important, but he wanted to play at the next level. But he had that injury that just kind of stayed with him. He was never able to overcome that. Sydney, the same thing. She had a high school injury.
That's
And, and she was on the track. She was getting emails and calls from, Coach Gino from UConn and staff from, University of Tennessee. But it's okay because I believe everybody falls exactly where they're supposed to be. And so while she didn't play at that level, she went to Howard University, which by its own right is elite and a standout. And she got exactly what she needed and what was best for her.
provide an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but she had to fight through those injuries, and Bailey had to fight through brutal injuries. And so those are things that really slow your chances down on the big stage. Um, and what's even more critical is how you come out on the other side of that.
So if you had to, and you got a whole book, and we're gonna make sure we promote your book, and we'll talk about the foundation. But in this moment, right, there are many kids who aspire to play sports at college level and beyond, and they have dedicated their lives to it. What do you say to parents to guide them? Like, what is the one, if there's one thing, take as many as you want, but message you want to be sure parents instill in their kids in that process?
That is a very good question. And I'm going to give you an example. And I have often prayed and hoped that this was not me as a young mother. I was out at the high school that all three of our kids attended in Illinois. And I was just out for a walk. And there was a father who was walking a little child who couldn't have been no more than maybe 6. And he was running this little girl around the track. And so as I approached them, he said, "Well, remember we watched Carl Lewis the other day, and you're going to be like Carl Lewis one day." And for that little bitty kid, that's a lot of pressure. And I hear so many parents who feel like they have the next LeBron James or they have the next football star. It's a lot of that in our community. And the pressures are great for kids, especially when the parent wants the dream more than the kid does. And so my advice to parents, Bailey, my son, who was a phenomenal high school player, he was a great college player. But while he was going through his academic struggles in high school, we had to switch his classes around. We put him in a cooking class his junior year to make sure that he kept his grades were up. His GPA was, met all the NCAA standards. And Bailey had this cookbook that he would carry with him every day. He had this cookbook, and we didn't know, like, why is this kid so attached to this cookbook? And when the class was over, he said, "Mom, can I take that class again?" And we were like, "No, you have other classes that you have to take." But see, we missed it.
I see.
We missed it. And Homewood Flossmoor has one of the best culinary high school programs in the country.
Really?
And we missed it.
Yeah.
And Bailey is a chef today.
Yeah.
He had to give up that dream, but see, we missed it. And I think that there are a lot of parents who they see the trophy, they see the excitement, they see the money that comes with your likeness now. They see all that. And I think they missed the mark. And so my suggestion, recommendation, if I could scream it from the mountaintop, is to make sure that you know exactly what if your kid is showing something in terms of what their purpose might be in this life, you should listen.
Yeah.
Because Bailey showed us and we missed it.
I Tyler didn't play at that level, but he played college football as well. But Tyler is a gifted singer and musician. And I remember freshman year trying to decide, was he going to be in the band or was he going to play football? And like, well, it was freshman year, you can probably do both because you're not playing on Friday nights and this and that. And I remember advising him, he's showing some talent in sports. I know you love that too. Let's do that now. You can do music anytime. When Tyler stopped playing football, what did he change everything to and get a degree in? He is a vocal music performance degree. Music is his passion.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember piano lessons in second grade. They're like, well, you also want to play soccer, you also want to play baseball, and you can't do everything. You got to quit something. What is the thing? We've been missing it for a while too.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because we're bad parents. There's a pragmatic side to parenting, right? We can't do all the things because we can only go to so many places, and we think we're guiding them well. And maybe we did miss some things, but I will say there's a whole lot of things we got to.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And what we believe about, God's providence, they turned out to be.
Yeah.
Their passions found them. Their gifts and talents found them. And I wonder if they didn't need some of that space, some of that disappointment, some of that to guide them to where they know that they found their passion.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't push them toward it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I can say about Howard. I wasn't the first person jumping up and down for Sydney to go to Howard.
Okay.
But she was she did a lot of soul searching, I think, as a young lady, a young girl, getting ready to take that journey. And my husband knew it all the time. He was like, no, Howard is where she's supposed to be. So yeah,
like we talked about his intuition.
My husband is he's pretty anointed. I feel like he's pretty anointed. But he knew this all along. He was like, this is where she's supposed to be. And Howard, while she had some struggles, sports and HBCUs have come a long ways. And I'm happy that Sydney has been part of that journey in terms of turning the page on what people really feel and think about playing sports at the HBCU level. It was a wonderful opportunity for Sydney. And the coaches, this is another thing that you have to prepare for. Sydney was recruited by a whole different set of coaches than the coaches that were there when she graduated from college. Yeah. And that was an adjustment for her. It was a big adjustment. But her coach that she had her last 2 years at Howard allowed her to grow. And she allowed Sydney to do her first internship at Facebook in California. Most colleges will not allow a student athlete to do a summer internship.
Okay.
And so she was able to do that one summer in California and one summer in New York City. Her coach allowed that. And Sydney was very fortunate that Facebook worked with her in terms of keeping herself in shape and things like that, and also just giving her a wonderful experience in terms of her career. And so, and you have to really be able to help your kids make those decisions and really allow them to explore who it is and what it is that they want to be. So, and Sydney wanted to be at a university where they took these fancy trips during basketball season. She didn't get that at Howard, but Howard is now doing that. Okay. The girls are traveling, but Sid didn't let that stop her. She's been to 10 countries. She knew what she wanted, but I think that a lot of that comes from the determination that's required to be a student athlete. You have to be strong. You have to, and these are things that I get excited about.
I can tell.
I get excited. Yeah, because I just feel like, when I hear, I was in the nail shop and I heard this mother and she was going on and on about her son and they made the playoffs and she's so excited. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what high school this kid go, where is he going to school? And, she's so excited. And then someone said, oh, where does he go to school? And she said, oh, he's a seventh grader.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's just so much pressure.
Yeah, I hear kids are really being forced to specialize young. They
Yeah.
really
And
are. Yeah,
it's just so
yeah.
much pressure. And we're not even talking about the walkthrough, the NCAA requirements that shifts and changes every year. Being able to keep up with what that looks like for your kid, for your student athlete.
Yeah.
And so that's where my passion is because of the struggles that Kim and I had trying to make sure that our kids were ready. And we had a steep learning curve with Bailey. And Kim's mom had a steep learning curve with him. And so this is a generational thing that's not going to go away.
Here's another thing, though. I'm thinking about, um, right, the theme of this podcast, right? What is the thing that shook you up? It caused you to find a passion, find a purpose, find a whatever. And I think about all the twists and turns unexpected in your life and in Kim's life. And you see how effective, how you make change in your communities, how you've raised a beautiful family, how you live deeply into your faith. Like you lived the example for your children as they hit these things, these these spaces in life with roadblocks or things that would cause that shook them up or would cause them to have to find a pivot. You modeled that.
Mhm.
And so I love that you found a passion in this lane, although I think you had a lot of lanes, Lisa.
I did. I
You
had a
know, you've
lot.
got a lot of well, but I think
Yeah.
the
They've
core
been good
motivation's been the
lanes.
same. Yeah, the
Yeah.
core made it of change and of productivity and health. I think that's always been your lane from the time you started that early job with Shirley Darrell and her. Like you've
Oh, yeah.
always been about that. So who you are hasn't changed over, just how those passions have come to fruition. And you're seeing a similar thing in your kids, right? Well, you're adults, they're fully grown people now. And I think the thing that I would like to be on a broader scale, encouraging certainly the specifics of you've got a population you can speak to and help these children, help their kids through this maze of sports onto life and finding passion and identity. I think that's huge. But I think also just the model of try to do the right thing, live your life the best you can, lead into your faith when you get another thing you got to respond to that you may not
Right.
have chosen, and thinking about other people, giving back, leaning into, pouring into others, it becomes a productive life. Because here's the deal, none of the stuff we acquire is going with us, not a thing. Many of the experiences we have, we're going to forget. You talked about your mom who's lived 102 years, but she has dementia, things she doesn't remember, right? So even our experiences, it's what are you leaving? And you talk about legacy. You're talking about leaving some skill sets. You're talking about leaving a perspective, sharing with vulnerability those places where you've struggled. I think that's the thing. I'm so proud of you. Um, I love you dearly. You know that.
Oh.
I'm gonna get through
Oh, yes.
this interview maybe without crying. I'm thinking about all the things that this beautiful life that you've led and are still leading. We ain't trying to let you out of here too soon. I pray that's nothing, not God's plan. We didn't even talk about being able to share your story on International Women's Day at the UN. Like, what? I remember when you told me that and let me read your speech. Like I was telling you earlier, I was a little salty that I wasn't in the had my face in the place. But I mean, I understand it was during COVID and all of these restrictions and how many people you could have and security and all of that. But your life has been making a difference for a long time. And it's not just in the big achievements, it's in the journey. It's in the struggle. Remember when I read your autobiography, well, your speech, somewhat autobiographical, and you know how we talk about you don't recognize, you don't experience your own absence from a place. Because I'd gone on to college and done all those things, I thought we were in touch, but I never considered how you felt left behind. We all left. except that you were learning things and engaging life. You're very much like your mother as a parent. And your daughter, like,
Drink on that.
yeah, I'm just thinking about who she is and who each of them are. Like, that was a necessary part of your story.
Absolutely. I believe that.
Mhm.
I
And
I,
Tisha
I
needed to be
believe that.
born. I believe that. I
Yeah.
always say that. Well, her egg was up. So it was
Tisha
time.
is, it's so funny because Tisha is that kid. She didn't play sports.
Mhm.
She tried, but she discovered in high school the sports was not her gig. But she's brilliant.
Yeah.
She's a brilliant young lady. And she has always been the little voice of reason on my shoulder.
Oh, you said that.
Yeah, I'm probably going to cry because she's the silent one that shows up.
Okay.
And she's always been that way. And it's just like a whisper that passes by. It's not a lot of conversation. It's just, this is what it is. And she just keeps it moving. And so when I look at my girls, so my whole speech, as you mentioned, that was such an honor to be at the United Nations, something that was totally unexpected. I had to take a back seat to ask myself, how did I end up at the UN? How did I do this? But I've got some pretty strong examples in my family. My sister Anita, who's a legend,
Mhm. Yeah.
but all right, she's a legend. And one of the first Black women's um, who ever worked in corporate America. She's the one that saw me moving on the path that she felt. I think my baby sister needs to be recognized for one of the 30, 30 Black future leaders of this country. And my brother Terry, my sister Carol, my sister Jackie, who runs my mother's nonprofit, which is 30 plus years strong, helping those in need. And my sister Betty, who's been in public service, and my beautiful sister Donna, who passed away a few years ago. I mean, these were living examples for me.
That's a mess.
And these are women who were trailblazers that they didn't even realize it, but they were trailblazers for me at times that I have felt left behind. But I could look to them and see that this was a legacy that my mom and dad built. My mom was one of the strongest community service giants,
Yeah.
I believe, and she left that legacy. And so my speech at the United Nations was a speech to my daughters, in terms of being strong and, pushing forward through adversity. Because I think at some point in our lives, we all get left behind for some reason, one reason or another. I think that we find ourselves, as my mother would say, you got to sit still, you got to be still, you got to stand still, you have to pray, you have to find that faith. And I am so fortunate that I'm married to a man that he has the faith. Job is one of my favorite chapters in the book. And Kim has reminded me of that so much. You have to allowing me to stand still and absorb things. And so I want that for my children. And so it's been a journey. So you guys all went off to live your lives, to start your lives. And initially I was probably like, oh, they all left me. But that wasn't the case. You guys left to start your lives. And I had to sit still for a whole year to figure out which way my life was going. And I think that, through
Well, you had a
those,
baby. I don't know how still you were. You
Yeah.
just weren't in college at the
Yeah.
major university. You still went to school.
yeah, I still
You
went to
were that,
school.
but I guess you meant stillness in the quietness of planning. We
Yes.
weren't, I don't know, that freshman year. You ain't
Yeah.
really thinking that hard about
Yeah.
that comes on later. So
Yeah.
sophomore year, it seems when people start to settle down, you would had to work through things that many of us didn't get to until later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had a wonderful, my mom got me through. My mom got me through. And she's 102. And, I'm still trying to understand dementia as we have this conversation. And, you and I both 60, 61-ish.
We dealing with
And
60. I
yeah,
told you
and
that.
so
We
I'm
gonna stop right
thinking,
there.
I'm thinking about my mother, and
Yeah,
still
yeah.
I carry um, things that are painful, and I'm so used to calling my mom. And so, ironically, the last time I went home to visit her, through her faith and her connection with God, she looked at me and she said, "Let it go."
Oh, wow.
She said, "Let it
It's
go."
hmm.
And I cried, and she said, "Wipe your tears." This is a woman in wee hours of the night that have, she has, dementia. She shows up now.
Yeah.
I find that she shows up at night. And so, and she looked at me and she said, "Wipe your tears because you're going to need them." That's what she said to me. And so, I try to leave that legacy for my children, and now I'm a grandmother.
I know.
One of the most remarkable times in my life.
Is it not fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just to be able to do things different with my granddaughters,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to that journey with them. So but it's so much legacy, and I'm proud of my kids because they're good people. They're good people. And despite this world, they, through the legacy I think that comes from both sets of their grandparents. Tisha has an additional set of
Yeah.
grandparents.
Yes.
So she's fortunate to have 3 sets of grandparents. You just see the legacy that's been left for them to really absorb and learn, and, try to give back as much as they can. And they may not have, Bailey's, he's a chef, but he has a heart of gold. And so I think, tying that back to the kids playing sports, from when they were teeny tiny, they had to learn that grit. And I really do think that Tisha wrote for my 50th birthday, she wrote me a letter. And I never thought about it. And she said, "Mom, you are, you have grit.
You do have good.
You have grit that a lot of people don't have."
Mhm.
But she said, "Things have not come easy for you, but because you have this grit about you, you're able to get on the other side of things." And so I was like, I don't really know how I feel about that.
It's grit
But
and grace
yeah,
because I don't think I happen to be on the inside, right? But certainly from the outside, you don't wear it.
yeah,
You don't wear the things you wrestle through. You don't wear how many things you control or try to control. Yeah, there's that. But no, but
yeah,
really, but you don't wear it. You still have a gentleness about how you, a firmness and a gentleness about how you lead. I would say how you learn. She's right. That's a good word. Grit.
yeah. I've come
Yeah.
to appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I've come
Yeah.
to, at 60, I've come to appreciate God's grace.
Mhm.
I think that we all, we move through this life, and, we tend to forget about God's grace and mercy. And I think that we have to stay in touch with that. And I've learned that at this age through trials and trying to understand things, and, going through struggles, that, I have to ask God for that, in order to be the person that I'm supposed to be. And, my whole project, fourth quarter plus overtime, it's been with me for years, for over 15 years. And God has not allowed me to, I mean, there are days where I'm like, I'm gonna throw in the towel. And I don't. I stick with it. It comes back to me. And so I think that when you're wrestling with something and you think you're gonna set it down, I look at you, I'm so proud of you, and things have not been easy, as we plow through this life. But once we get it, once we recognize that this is a path that God has put us on, it makes my journey that much more easy. So, and I want to leave that legacy for my children, and they are so supportive, and I'm blessed to have them being so supportive. So they get the journey. I mean, they're the characters in the
They're
story.
the characters in the story. Yeah,
They
yeah,
are the characters in the
yeah,
story.
yeah,
And Tisha as well, even though she didn't play sports,
yeah,
she has a role.
yeah.
She's a smart young lady, and she was like, "You guys can have that, but I'm gonna go over here with my finances, and I'm gonna do my accounting thing." And
Yeah.
and that's what she decided to do. So, but there's a story in that. So, yeah, so I'm just, it all starts from the strength, I believe, and you're a witness to this, our parents. You know, we're very fortunate.
We were very fortunate.
Yeah, we're very fortunate
And
to.
I know we often think about those places, and I'm sure my parents had their moments of postmortem when they saw me make some decisions that were like not what they would have had for me, and our children do the same. But they too will have these testimonies for the next generation that I think will be powerful,
Yeah.
and I think that's what matters.
Some of my favorite memories at your house growing up was your mother, sitting at the kitchen
That
table.
round table, Thelma's
She was
round
sitting
table.
at that kitchen table, and she always had advice. She would be sharp sometimes,
Yeah, she would.
but she would have that advice. She could see it coming through the door. And those are some of my favorite memories of being at your house. I remember you guys hosted my bridal shower at your house. And just, the strength of your mom. I mean, we were very fortunate little Black girls growing up in Oklahoma City. And
Our
our parents
community was unique
it
too.
was very unique, very
Very unique.
strong. And,
Yeah.
there's that grace. We had grace and we were poised. And, our parents taught us how to, carry ourselves. I really believe that, David.
Remember Julia Essence models? Your mom
Julia,
had us
my
modeling.
mom always had us. She was
I was a model there for
if there was a fashion show, my mother
yeah.
could do a fashion
Yeah,
show.
she
And I just
could.
think, her school of etiquette. I mean, we were very fortunate,
Yeah.
and as I look around at all of our friends that, just everybody's so poised and, we're living great lives. We've overcome things and, it just circles back to our parents, I think.
It's so funny. You remember my mother's kitchen table. I think about your dining room table.
Uh-huh.
Because when we had sleepovers at your house, I always slept under the dining room table. I didn't want to get stepped on. I was kind of under the dining room table. Yeah, those are incredible memories
Yeah.
to have been in elementary school together, and we're in each other's weddings and through at college, and now to be grandmothers at about the same time.
Mhm.
Is really a blessing. And we were chatting a little bit before all this started today about um, some of the pearls of wisdom we've dropped for each other,
Mhm.
and I remember a difficult time and you told me, just be patient, be patient with yourself, it takes time. Then the other one I said earlier, I'm gonna need you, tap, tap, I'm gonna need you to be a little more self-aware. Oh my gosh, dang it, you were right. But anyway, I know I can't go on. We could sit here and tell stories for hours.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
would be happy to do
Oh,
so.
yeah.
We've already gone. Like Aaron had given me the time. I don't know if you saw me just say this ain't about to end. I just kind of but let's bring this part of the conversation at least to a close.
Oh.
And we are toasting with a classic martini.
Yes.
With about 2.5 ounces of, I use Grey Goose vodka, half an ounce of vermouth. I put a little bit of olive brine in there, and we garnished it with 3 olives. Cheers! If we can reach
It
each other.
is
We might have
it
to
is
kinda
delicious.
like it. Cheers.
Cheers. To friendship.
To friendship, sis. All right, y'all. This has been just one of the greatest honors I've had since I've been on this
Aw.
journey to share my friend with you all, Lisa Davis.
I feel I could talk forever.
And we probably will, but I know you got to get back on the road. We'll keep it going after this. But keep a lookout, y'all, for her book, Fourth Quarter Plus Overtime. There'll be opportunities for you to be exposed to her foundation, which, well, I only lightly mentioned that Rock Nation that you're part of the Rock
Uh-huh.
Nation group of foundations. That's amazing. You're going to do good work.
Thank you.
I know that you will.
Thank you.
And it's been my privilege to bring you and some of your passion to the audience that I have. Pray it continues to grow. but they're engaged. They're folks who listen. They're folks who are trying to do the best for themselves. And this is what we do. We support each other.
Thank you, my sister.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right, y'all. This has been another episode of Tales from the Shaker. I bet you heard something that you connected with. And I bet you'll have fodder to shake things up in your own life. All right. Take care.